My wife cheated on me with my business partner, left our family for him, now she's crying at my door after he dumped her. My ex-wife Tessa, who's also 38, and I had been together for 19 years, married for 16 of them. We have a 14-year-old daughter together. But about 6 months ago, Tessa walked away from all of it to be with my business partner. Well, ex-business partner, technically. He ended up selling his shares and leaving the company after I found out about their affair. Joel, the guy I used to run the company with, wasn't just some coworker. We'd actually been friends for years. We met working at the same job, hit it off, and eventually decided to leave our 9-to-5s behind to start our own business. We had a solid 5-year run building it up together. What I didn't know during that time was that he had been having an affair with my wife for 3 of those years. I only discovered it about 6 months ago. I had picked up Tessa's phone for something, and that's when I saw the texts. When I confronted her, she didn't even try to lie or make excuses. She came right out and admitted to it. Said she was tired of hiding it and just wanted to leave. That moment wrecked me. I hadn't had a clue that she was unhappy in our marriage. I told her I was willing to do whatever it took to fix things. Looking back, I realize how desperate that was. I even begged her to try and work it out. But instead of being open to it, she just got irritated. She told me she only married me because she got pregnant and didn't want to raise a child alone. Said she tried to love me all those years, but it never worked, and now that she had someone she truly loved, she wasn't going to let me stop her. And now that the truth was out, I just needed to accept it and move on. That hit hard, especially thinking about our daughter. But Tessa didn't hesitate. She filed for divorce soon after. Honestly, the process was surprisingly simple. She didn't ask for alimony or try to fight over money or property. The asset division was fair, and we finalized the divorce in just a couple of months. Eventually, I came to my senses. I realized that after everything she'd done, there was no saving our relationship. Once the papers were filed, I decided to confront Joel, too. He apologized, said he'd been meaning to tell me for a long time but didn't know how. Not long after that, he quit the business and said he and Tessa were moving away. Claimed they didn't want to make things any harder on me than they already had. Tessa had landed a great job in Boston, and Joel's cousin lived there too, so he figured he could work with him. Said it was all taken care of. He explained all this in an email, and that was the last I ever heard from him. The last time I saw Tessa was 2 months ago, when we finalized the divorce in person. Since then, there's been nothing from either of them. Life's been hard for me and especially for my daughter, but we're managing, day by day. I still had the business to run, and that helped keep my mind occupied. My focus has been on giving my daughter the best life I possibly can. But then, just about a week ago, Tessa came back out of nowhere, and I'm still trying to figure out if my daughter and I handled things the right way. It was around 11 at night. I was wrapping up some work in my home office, and my daughter was already in bed. All of a sudden, someone started ringing the doorbell like crazy, pounding on the door non-stop. We both rushed over, and when I looked through the window, I saw Tessa standing there. My daughter immediately told me not to open the door. She's been really upset with her mom. Even though Tessa has partial custody, she hasn't bothered to stay in touch, and my daughter hasn't forgiven her for cheating on me either. Their relationship's been pretty strained ever since. Still, I had this gut feeling, if Tessa was showing up at my door this late, something serious must have happened. So I opened the door. But instead of stepping inside, she stood there yelling at me from the front step. Said she was going to sue me, take me to court, and make sure she got what she was owed. I was standing there in shock, trying to figure out what she was even talking about. I had to ask her to slow down and explain, because none of it was making any sense. She was clearly furious and said I was just pretending not to know what was going on. According to her, I'd hidden the truth about Joel from her, about the kind of man he really was, and she believed I'd done it on purpose, as payback for what she did to me. Then she pulled up her sleeve and showed me her arm. There was a band-aid covering a cut, and it didn't take much to figure out that Joel had hurt her. I was stunned. I'd worked alongside him for years and never once saw him lose his temper like that. Tessa told me things had been falling apart ever since they moved to Boston. They'd been fighting constantly, and nothing was like what she expected. She thought maybe he was just having a tough time adjusting to the change, but even after a whole month, he was still angry. She said Joel kept blaming her for everything, leaving the business he'd helped build, being forced to work for his cousin who treated him like garbage. He resented her for telling me about the affair before he was ready and for dragging him to Boston for her job. He was bitter, and he made sure she knew it. Their fights had gone from nightly arguments to something much worse. The night before she showed up, things got out of control. He threw a vase at her in a fit of rage. She tried to get out of the way, but it still hit her and cut her arm. Until then, it had just been verbal abuse. But that night, it crossed the line. She packed up and left, took the next flight back just to talk to me. Then she told me something that really threw me. She said Joel hadn't even called or messaged her since she walked out. No apology. Nothing. And somehow, she decided that I was to blame for all of this. Said I must have known he was like this all along and didn't warn her because I wanted to get back at her. Called it cruel. So, according to Tessa, she'd actually done me a favor by not fighting over anything in the divorce, and now I couldn't even do the decent thing and make sure she was safe. Honestly, it sounded ridiculous. Like I mentioned before, I had worked with Joel for years. I knew him well at work, but that's where the relationship ended. In a professional setting, the guy was calm, collected, even kind. I never dated him or spent time with the women he was involved with, so there was no way I could have known about this other side of him. Her accusing me of hiding the truth on purpose? That just didn't sit right with me. It made no sense, and to be honest, it irritated me. She was talking like I owed her something. I tried to reason with her, told her I had no clue any of this was going on, and said I was sorry she was going through it, but I also pointed out that she'd brought this on herself. She could threaten me with all the lawsuits she wanted, but deep down, she had to know I wasn't to blame here. Still, she kept going, insisting I'd known everything and that now she was going to fight for all the things she didn't go after during our divorce. My daughter had been standing nearby through this whole mess, quietly watching from the hallway. I'd almost forgotten she was there, to be honest, because the argument had pulled me in so deep. But when Tessa and I started going in circles, my daughter finally stepped in. She cut in and told Tessa to leave. That threw me off for a second. I hadn't expected her to say anything. And judging by Tessa's expression, neither did she. Tessa snapped back, told our daughter to shut her mouth and stay out of it, that she wasn't old enough to understand what was happening, and she should just go to bed. But my daughter didn't back down. She stood her ground and told her mother that she had no right to speak to me that way, especially not after everything she'd done. She said I'd been absolutely heartbroken ever since I found out about the cheating, and meanwhile, Tessa, being the selfish, heartless person she is, just ran off like nothing happened. Then she reminded her that in all that time, Tessa hadn't even tried to see her. She never reached out, never called, never visited, not once. She'd been too busy with her new life and with Joel to care. My daughter told her straight up that she'd failed not just as a wife, but as a mom too. And because of that, she had no business showing up like the victim in a mess she made herself. She's only 14, but in that moment, I saw just how much she's grown since the divorce. The things she said, they hit hard, even for Tessa. Tessa just stood there, stunned and silent. Then my daughter said something that really drove the whole thing home. She told Tessa that since she chose to leave and build a life with Joel, she'd have to deal with whatever came next on her own. We weren't her family anymore. She'd made her bed, and now she'd have to lie in it. That's exactly what she deserved for walking all over people who loved her. And with that, she slammed the door in her mom's face and went back to her room. I could hear Tessa crying on the other side of the door, but I didn't open it. I didn't go check on her either. After everything she'd said and done, I just didn't see the point. So I went to bed and tried to put it out of my mind. I kept myself busy with work over the next few days. To be honest, I felt proud of my daughter for standing up for me like that, and for not letting Tessa manipulate the situation. Things were starting to feel a little more stable after that, but then, 3 days ago, Tessa showed up again. This time, she brought a lawyer. Thankfully, my daughter was out with her friends when they came by. I haven't told her about it yet. But man, I was furious. Tessa said that after the way our daughter spoke to her during their last encounter, she decided that there was no way she was going to let her live with me anymore. That she was going to fight for full custody now. She claimed the reason she hadn't kept in touch with our daughter after the affair came out wasn't because she didn't care, but because she didn't want to make things worse for me. She said she wanted to avoid dragging us all through a messy custody battle. Claimed she was trying to leave quietly and spare me more pain, which is why she stayed away. Basically, she was trying to say she'd done all of that for my benefit, not because she was running away from her responsibilities. I didn't buy a word of it. I told her flat out that the only reason she didn't fight for anything in the divorce, including custody, was because she was eager to start over with Joel. It had nothing to do with protecting me. And I wasn't about to feel bad for her over that. But Tessa wasn't listening. She said none of that mattered anymore. Now, she wanted custody, and she was going to fight for it. Said she wasn't going to let me poison our daughter's mind by filling her head with lies and teaching her to disrespect her own mother. She told me our daughter had been completely out of line the last time they met, and that instead of correcting her, I'd encouraged it. So she was done playing nice. She was taking this to court. I told her to go right ahead and shut the door in her face. I just couldn't deal with her anymore. Still, now I'm sitting here wondering if there's any truth to what she said. I want to believe I'm doing the right thing. But honestly, I'm not sure anymore. Was I wrong for not stopping my daughter when she spoke to her mom that way? Update 1. After giving it some real thought, I've come to the conclusion that I don't have anything to feel guilty about. My daughter stood up for me in a moment where I truly needed it. She said what needed to be said, and I'm proud of her for it. Reading through people's comments made me realize how foolish I was for even second-guessing myself. Tessa cheated on me, walked away from our family, and then tried to act like the victim. I don't owe her sympathy. A lot of folks pointed out that I should talk to my daughter about the custody situation before anything blindsides her, and they're absolutely right. She deserves to be prepared, just in case things go to court. Knowing that Tessa might still go through with filing for full custody after everything that's happened, I decided to sit down and talk with my daughter yesterday. I told her everything, laid it all out, because I didn't want to keep anything from her. She's already shown me that she's more mature than most kids her age, and even though it breaks my heart that she had to grow up so fast, I figure the least I can do is make sure she's prepared for what might come next. So far, we haven't heard anything official from Tessa yet, but it feels like just a matter of time. My daughter's 14, which means her opinion will hold some weight in court if it comes to that. Ideally, I'm hoping this whole mess can be handled in mediation, but I'm not counting on that. Just in case, I made sure to ask my daughter directly, did she really want to stay with me? Her answer was crystal clear, absolutely. She's made it known, more than once, that she doesn't want anything to do with her mom right now. Maybe somewhere down the line she'll feel differently and try to rebuild some kind of relationship, but at the moment, it's just too raw. She still blames Tessa for breaking up our family, and honestly, I can't argue with her on that. That's exactly what happened. Now, I've never wanted to be the kind of dad who turns his kid against her mom out of spite. But in this situation, I really don't think I've had to say much at all. Tessa's actions have spoken loud enough on their own. And considering how close those two used to be before the affair came to light, the distance between them now, it says a lot. Of course, Tessa's not thrilled that our daughter's taken my side. She always made a point of being the closer parent. And for those of you who asked, no, I wasn't the one who told our daughter about the affair. That was Tessa. She emailed our daughter a few days after she moved out. Didn't ask me beforehand. Just dropped that truth bomb and disappeared. It hit our daughter hard. She was hurt and confused, but even then, she still wanted to talk to her mom just once to try to understand. When I reached out to Tessa about it, asked her to speak to our daughter, she refused. Said she was too busy dealing with the divorce, and that talking about it wouldn't be appropriate. Claimed she'd already said what she needed to say in the email and didn't have anything else to add. I tried to get her to change her mind, told her our daughter had questions, needed closure, but she was firm. After that, she completely cut contact. And from that point on, my daughter's entire view of her mother flipped. I don't think it's right for Tessa to blame me for any of that. Anyway, I've got a good lawyer, and we're ready to deal with whatever comes our way. Update 2. A few days ago, Tessa finally made her move. I was officially served with the paperwork. She's going for full custody. My lawyer and I responded right away, contesting it. Tomorrow, we're scheduled to meet with a court-appointed mediator to see if we can settle this without it blowing up into a full-blown court case. But here's the twist. This morning, out of the blue, Joel called me. Yeah, Joel. Haven't heard from the guy since he moved away with Tessa. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity got the better of me. And as soon as I answered, he jumped right in, asking me to send Tessa back to him. Said he'd been trying to get in touch with her for days, couldn't reach her, and figured she must have been staying with me or at least talk to me. He wanted to know where she was. I told him straight I had no clue where she was staying. But yeah, I admitted that I had spoken to her recently. I also told him she was back because she's trying to get custody of our daughter. Now, just to be clear, I didn't tell him that to help him. My thinking was, if Joel showed up and tried to patch things up with Tessa, maybe, just maybe, he'd talk her out of this custody nonsense. Heck, if I was really lucky, maybe he'd convince her to give up parental rights altogether. So I gave him the rundown. Told him she was upset because he hadn't reached out after their last big blow-up. Said if he really wanted her back, he needed to act fast. The guy had no idea I was playing him a little, and I figured, if this worked out, great. If not, at least I tried to find a way to shut this thing down before it went any further. I even ran the idea past my lawyer, and surprisingly, he thought it made sense. We've already got the upper hand legally, but hey, saving time and avoiding court drama? That's a win in my book. Update 3. So, 2 days ago, Tessa and I finally sat down for our first mediation session. And of course, it was a disaster. She didn't agree with a single thing we brought up. Said the whole meeting was pointless, a waste of her time, and walked out after less than 30 minutes. It didn't even feel like she was there to compromise, just to argue. After that, I left to pick up my daughter from school. We got home, and Joel was waiting for us at the front door. The guy looked wrecked, like he hadn't slept in days. I could imagine how tough life must have been for him after living with Tessa for a couple of months. But I wasn't in the mood to deal with him. I told him we'd just gotten home and we needed some peace. I reminded him that I had already tried to help, and honestly, that was about as far as I was willing to go for the guy who had an affair with my wife. But then he broke down, right there on my porch. Said Tessa still hadn't responded to any of his messages since their fight. He had no idea where she was, and he was desperate. I told him again I didn't know where she was living, and I couldn't help him. He just sat down on the steps, head in his hands, crying like a man who'd finally realized he made a huge mistake. And that's when I started getting really ticked off. These two people blew up my life, destroyed my family. And now he was showing up at my door, hoping I'd help him fix what he broke. I told my daughter to go inside, and once she was out of earshot, I made it clear to Joel he needed to go. I was done with both of them. Just to get him off my back, I gave him Tessa's parents' contact info. Told him if he was that desperate, he could talk to them. But as far as I was concerned, he needed to leave me and my daughter out of it for good. And before he left, I told him the truth, plain and simple. You and Tessa ruined my life. I told Joel that I never wanted to see him hanging around my house again. He tried to apologize, said he never meant to hurt me, that he just fell in love with Tessa and couldn't help it. But I didn't want to hear any of it. I didn't say a word. I just stood there in silence until he got the message and walked away. These days, I'm just tired. Worn out. Most of the time, I feel like I'm running on empty. I don't even know what I'm doing with my life right now. I guess deep down, I'm hoping that Joel and Tessa manage to patch things up, not for their sake, but for mine. Because if they do, maybe they'll finally move on and stop dragging me and my daughter into their mess. Maybe then, I'll be able to move forward with my life. But honestly, I don't even know how to feel anymore. I'm just numb. And all I want is for this whole thing to be over. Update 4. So, a few days ago, Tessa officially pulled out of mediation. She said she was done trying to settle things civilly and wanted to take everything to court. It was a bold move, considering everyone knew that wouldn't end well for her, but I guess she hadn't fully faced reality until now. Then, just a couple hours ago, Tessa showed up again. This time, she brought Joel with her. I guess they'd managed to work things out between them. I didn't invite them in, since my daughter was homesick, and I didn't want to stress her out more than she already was. I told them to wait for me at a nearby cafe. I called my mom to come over and watch my daughter while I headed out to meet them. When I got there, they both started with apologies again. Said they were sorry for everything they'd put me through. But at this point, I'm way past apologies. I told them straight up that none of that mattered anymore. I just wanted to get to the point and hear why they'd asked me to meet them. That's when they finally dropped the act. They admitted they'd screwed up. Said they weren't happy in Boston. Tessa missed our daughter, and Joel missed running his own business. So now they had a couple of requests. Tessa wanted me to agree to send our daughter to visit her every weekend, or at the very least, every other weekend. And Joel? He wanted back into the business. Said he wanted to open a Boston branch and come on board again as a partner. Oh, and they wanted my answer in just a few days. Tessa's employer had told her she'd have to return to the office if she wanted to keep her job, so time was apparently ticking. I almost laughed. I told them there was no way I was agreeing to any of that. Joel had already quit and sold off his shares. That was signed and sealed. I had the paperwork. There was no way I was bringing him back into the company. I don't trust him, and that trust is never coming back. As for Tessa's proposal, it was ridiculous. Our daughter doesn't deserve to be shuttled back and forth every other weekend just so Tessa can feel better about herself. She should have thought about that before packing up and moving to Boston. That's not on me. They started pushing back, saying they were trying to meet me halfway because they didn't want to take things to court. I told them flat out that the idea of them winning in court was honestly laughable. The only reason they were trying to talk this out in person was because they thought they could wear me down. But I'm not weak. And I'm definitely not stupid. The only reason I agreed to meet was to shut this down once and for all. That shut them up pretty quick. They knew, just like I did, that they wouldn't stand a chance if this thing went before a judge. So I told them this: the only thing I'd agree to was having a conversation with my daughter just to see if she wanted to see her mother when she visited. That was it. Take it or leave it. I wasn't going to waste another second arguing. Tessa must have been feeling the pressure, because she agreed right away. And with that, I left. When my daughter feels better, I'll talk to her. But I'm not going to push her into anything she doesn't want to do. If she decides she's not ready to see her mom again, that's her choice. And I'll stand by it. Update 5. It's been a couple of months now since all that went down. In my last update, I said I wouldn't force my daughter to see Tessa if she wasn't ready, and I stuck to that. After she was feeling better, we sat down and talked. I told her exactly what I'd said to her mom. She thought about it for a bit and told me she needed time to figure out how she felt. I passed that along to Tessa. That was the last contact we had. Since then, there's been nothing from her or Joel. I don't know if they've finally sorted out their issues. Honestly, I don't really care. Far as I know, they're still living together in Boston. Good for them, I guess. At least they've stopped bothering us. That alone feels like a win. Now, for the first time in a long while, I can finally start to move forward. I'm focusing on my work, raising my daughter, and trying to live a life that's steady and peaceful, something I haven't had in years. And maybe that's the best kind of revenge, just living well. Being the kind of dad my daughter can count on. Teaching her to be strong, kind, and nothing like her mother. That's all I'm aiming for now. And I really hope I get it right.